What broke my dad wasn't losing his job. It was hearing his 9-year-old son tell him he'd rather live with mom. They'd been separated for 8 months, still sharing custody, still civil at the door. My brother Caleb was staying with dad that weekend when he said it, half joking, mid-serial. Mom lets me stay up later. You're kinda lame, Dad. Then he laughed and went back to his cartoons like it was nothing. Dad laughed too, but I was 17. Old enough to catch the flinch behind his eyes. 2 days later, Dad showed up at Caleb's soccer practice with a brand new dirt bike strapped in the truck bed. Caleb was 8. Dad said he'd figure out the rules later. Mom found out and called screaming. Dad told her to mind her own house. That was the start. Every weekend became a competition Caleb didn't even know he was judging. Dad let him skip homework for go-kart tracks. Dad bought a trampoline with no net because nets are for babies. When Mom sent Caleb over with a bike helmet, Dad tossed it in the garage and said real riders didn't need training wheels for their heads either. I tried saying something once. Dad just said, "You want him picking her over me too?" Caleb started calling him the fun dad to his friends. Dad ate it up like oxygen. Then came the ATV. Dad bought it used off some guy from work. No permit, no safety course, nothing. He drove Caleb out to the field behind our old house and let him take the wheel himself at 8 years old. I found out because Caleb showed me the video, grinning ear to ear, mud splattered across his face. Dad's voice in the background. "Faster, bud, you got this." I told Dad it was insane. He told me I sounded like Mom. The night Caleb fell off the trampoline and split his chin open, Dad didn't even take him to urgent care. He butterfly taped it himself in the bathroom and told Caleb not to mention it because Mom would use it against him. Caleb, 8 years old, learned to lie to his mother that week to protect his father's reputation as the fun one. I started sleeping badly. I kept waiting for the thing that would finally make him stop. It happened on a Sunday in October. Dad had been talking all week about a rope swing he'd rigged over the Quarry Lake near his new apartment, the kind older teenagers used, 30 feet up on a cliff edge. He wanted to film Caleb doing it, said it'd be the coolest thing that ever happened to him. Caleb didn't want to. He told me that on the phone the night before. Quiet, almost embarrassed. Dad says I'll be scared for nothing. I called Dad. I begged him not to do it. He hung up on me. The video exists somewhere still, though nobody in our family has ever watched it twice. Caleb climbing out onto the rope. Dad's voice, cheerful, coaxing. Caleb hesitating at the edge, looking back once. Dad saying, "Don't be your mother about this." Caleb let go too early. The rope swung him into the rock face instead of clearing it. Mom got the call at 4:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was the one who picked up first and had to hand her the phone without being able to say a single word. Caleb was in surgery for 6 hours. A fractured skull, bleeding on the brain, a shattered wrist he'd used trying to catch himself. The surgeon told us the next 24 hours would decide whether he'd have permanent brain damage. Dad sat in the hospital hallway with his head in his hands, saying over and over that he didn't mean for it to go like this, like meaning to mattered anymore. Caleb woke up on the 3rd day, groggy, tubes taped to his arm, one eye still swollen shut. Dad practically ran to his bedside, already talking, already trying to fix it with words the way he'd tried to fix everything else with stunts and bikes and dares. Caleb turned his head away from him, toward the window, toward nothing in particular. "I want Mom," he said. His voice was small and flat, nothing like the kid who used to call his father the fun one. "I don't want you here." Dad stood frozen in the doorway of that hospital room for a long time after that, and something in his face told me he finally understood what he'd actually been racing to win.